Hello everybody. In this video, I'm going to be talking about learning by association, the critical feedback loop, and potentials and probabilities. So this topic, I wanted to start off by saying that, this video, it may be a little bit complex. I'm working through these ideas, so they're not really cemented down. They're not really formed or they're not really formed, but I have them in my abstract thoughts. So my attempt here in this video, so disclaimer, is going to be to try to attempt to explain them in words, and to really expand on them and develop them as far as I can, because I'm very interested in doing that. And also, you may get confused. Well, not confused, but you may just either get bored or you may not know what I'm talking about, and that's okay if you don't want to watch this video. But if you do, then come along for the ride. Okay, so first I'm gonna start talking about learning by association. I recently made a video where I spoke on how you can learn with introspective techniques. So introspective techniques are associated with this learning by association, but I would say it is a little bit different because introspection deals with kind of what you know only, right? And association deals with the exterior as well as what you know. So you include that other side, which is the exterior in association. And this is obviously very different from learning directly or learning by instruction. I call it learning directly, but it's basically like you're being taught something, right? You're not learning, you're being taught, right? So it's like instructions, right? You're being told what to do and you just do it, and it's almost like copying, copy paste, imitation, right? Where it's like, how do you ride a bike? Well, you put your right foot and then your left foot, and then you balance yourself and whatever, and you're told what to do and you do it, right? And this is very different from indirect learning, which is actually like the difference between learning and acquiring. So it gets very deep in this case because learning is basically so if we keep like going back and back further, learning deals with distinguishing learning from acquisition. Learning actually deals with being taught, right? Which is with this idea of just copying, right? Just imitating, being told what to do through instruction, and it's very direct. And acquisition, like when you go to another country, you acquire the language. So you're exposed to it, and through different means, through different ways, you acquire the language, right? A baby, we all acquire our first language with our parents, with our family members, right? We're not taught the language. At times we could be taught our native language, but mostly we acquire it, right? So then when you learn a new language and you're not acquiring it, but you're learning it in the classroom, it's more difficult, right? But anyway, in direct teaching or direct learning deals with this, right? It deals with being told what to do, right? And introspection deals more with like the memory, what you really remember on your own, like kind of establishing your own criteria. Association or learning by association for me is like the practical way or the practical elements of introspective learning. I'm gonna explain what I mean by association. So association basically means relating different things to other things, right? Like in psycholinguistics, excuse me, there's this exercise. I think I've spoken on it before. Like if you say A, right? Okay, I tell you this letter starts with A. What do you think it is? Apple. No. Okay, and then I say A-N. A-N. What do you think it is? Animal. Right? And then I say A-N-P. And you're like, A-M-P, ample, right? Okay, the word is ample, right? But you see how I let you think of this, right? That's association. So association is like like when you're talking to a friend and your friend is telling you about a book they read, and they're like, oh yeah, and in this book, the main character goes through a forest, and in the forest blah 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 blah, and then you think about a time you were in the forest and something interesting happened, and then you're like, oh, that reminds me when I thought about that one time I was in the forest and this happened to me. Your story, you associate it. So association is connection, right? Through different, like connecting one thing to another thing, right? You associate it. That's basically what it is. So I'm going to get into it in a little bit, but basically here, before I get into it, I'm going to talk about the memory castle, which the student reminded me of. And the memory castle is, I guess, it all has to do with association, right? Like you can remember certain things by telling yourself certain things about those things. Like if you want to remember that a bus route takes you somewhere, and in the bus route there are, like, for example, two sixes, then you can like associate that with, like, okay, this bus goes downtown and it has two sixes, so the bus that has two sixes goes downtown, and you just tell yourself that, and then you'll just remember it, right? So they're like mnemonic techniques, right? And the memory castle is supposedly this narration you tell yourself. Like, let's say you have to study for a test and you have to learn about Piaget and then Vygotsky and then Brunner. So you could tell yourself, like, when I enter my memory castle, at the front door is Piaget. Piaget is my butler, and he's holding four stages that he's going to give me, four keys for my rooms, right? And those would be his four stages, like his sensoriomotor stage, his formal stage, his pre-operational stage, his operational stage, and things like that, right? So you work. It's like you're walking into that room, into that castle, and you're, you obviously first have to build it in your mind, but as soon as you build it, then you're able to access it at any moment, because you told yourself a story, right? You associate it. So it's like glue, right? It's connecting things. Sherlock Holmes does this, but I think he does it to store important or valuable information. In the British series Sherlock, you see him go into his memory castle, into his mind castle, and he'll go like this, and he's like accessing all these different facts or data or whatever, in order for him to know the information that is relevant to him solving the case or whatever the crime that he's working on at the moment, right? So I thought that was an interesting contribution to this topic of association, since I think I was talking about it with a student, and he's like, oh yeah, like the memory castle, and I was like, oh yeah, that's right. So I wanted to know what the elements of associated learning and memory are, and excuse me, I didn't really use ChatGPT that much for this video. I did a little bit, and this was one of those moments. First, I used Google. I searched what are the elements of associated learning and memory, and they're kind of different, but here I'm just gonna like put them together, right? Basically, they have to do with behaviorism, which to me was like, what? I never imagined that behaviorism, Skinner, Watson, Pavlov, would have to do with associated learning. But I mean, it is. You're connecting, and the basis of this, ChatGPT says, is stimulus response, right? So there's a stimulus, like the letter A, and there's a response. I think of apple, or I think of animal, or I think of ample, right? You may think of something else. You may think of Albert because Albert's your friend, or you may think of I don't know, whatever you associate with A or B or C. Or if I talk to you about the forest, whatever you associate with the forest, right? Like for me, it's this experiment from psychology that you would imagine like some keys you found on the floor, and then you would imagine like a cup, and then you had to describe the cup, and then a cabin, and according to how you describe, like, was the cabin door open or closed, that's how open or closed you are, and things like that. That's what I think about when I think about, that's what I associate with the word forest, right, or with the concept of forest, right, among other things, right. There's like a tree, it's like branches. You think a, or you think forest, you think of a concept or an idea, and there are other things that are related to that, and then those things are related to other things, and it just gets like incredible, right. So you could probably do that, and again, that's through stimulus response. So you can also program people by having them associate certain things, right, and that's where conditioning comes in, right? Like if they think about, I don't know, let's say a person hates a book, and then you just mention the idea, like, oh, I just bought a book, right? And then it's like, I hate that, right? Like, why do you even talk about that, right? And then that could be like, that association, right? Stimulus response, kind of interesting. There are these other things which I didn't consider, which ChatGPT gave me. Semantic association. Well, semantic association, I think, is basically what I'm talking about here, which is the meaning of words, right? So lately, I've been looking into polysemic words, which are very interesting, like the fact that you can say one word and it has different meanings, right? Like some typical ones are like bank, right? You sit on a bank, or you go to a bank, right? Organ, you play an organ, or you have organs, right, in your body. Um, but yeah, so it depends. If I say bank, what do you think? Do you think of the institution, or do you think of the seating, or where you can sit, right? And there are a lot of words like this in English, like play. Play is an interesting one, right? You can play a movie, you can play a song, you can play a game, right? You can watch a play, right? And there are more. You can play sports, right? So there are different meanings to the word play, and depending on the context. So that's semantic association. What do you associate play with? What do you associate run with, right? The computer doesn't run, the computer runs, the machine runs, or I run at the park, right? Emotional association. So this is even more interesting because it has to do with like what you associate things with, right? Like if you say, I don't know, I associate carrots with that one time I threw up when I was a kid, so I don't like carrots, right? And other people can be like, what? But it's subjective because it's based on your experience, it's based on your emotions, right? Or of course there are collective emotional associations that can be, for example, if like a company withholds its money from its employees, and everyone starts to get angry because they assume that they're not going to get paid, right? So like collectively they're all angry. And then temporal associations, which I thought were interesting because I hadn't thought about them. Well, not because I hadn't thought of them, but I thought they were interesting too. And they basically have to do with the things that you have seen or learned or heard closer to the present, like in the near past. You're going to remember them better. You're going to think about them and maybe associate things in the present or even in the future with those near past things than things with farther down the past, right? So let's say you've recently learned about, I don't know, psychology, and then you're in an engineering course, right, at some place, and somebody says something about engineering, and then you kind of relate it to psychology because that's what you recently saw, like a couple weeks ago or months ago. But then a couple years ago, like way farther down in the past, you took an engineering course, but you're not remembering anything from there because it's farther away from you, right? So this just has to do, that's why it's called temporal association, because it deals with time, right? So the logic here is that the closer it is to you, the closer, the more you will remember it. And the farther away it is from you, like into the past, the harder it will be to remember, right? Which again, the unconscious stores all of this. So I don't really think you ever truly forget it. Okay, well, anyway, it's the idea of learning by association. It's the idea of remembering things that lead to other things, and those things lead to other things, right? Which I think it would be a cool experiment to do, even with yourself. Like just see where one thing takes you, and see where that other thing takes you, and kind of make like this tree diagram of like with ramifications or branches and write an idea, right? Like animal, and see wolf over here. a person that's aggressive, right? They get called animal. And just see where your associations take you. And then a person that's aggressive, what do you think about that, right? Guns, knife, or a fight or something like that. Um, okay, so this is based obviously on Sigmund Freud, Sigmund Freud's free association, or this idea of free writing also. So I think Freud used to say, like, just associate whatever you associate that with whatever comes next, with whatever comes next, with no filters, right? Without any judgment, without stopping because it may be wrong or morally incorrect or you don't like it. And, just free association, which is hard to do, I think, for a lot of people, because you really have to be open with yourself and just accept whatever it is, that even if you don't like it. But I think it's very interesting to do that free association, which I kind of tried to do in my videos. I kind of tried to talk with no script and just whatever comes to my mind, I say it. And I think that's more natural. You flow more, right? You're not stopping all the time to think or stop yourself from saying something you're not supposed to say or something like that. And also free writing, right? No periods, no commas, just one thought after another thought after another thought, just ramble on and see what comes of it, right? What you learn about yourself from it. They're really good techniques to learn about yourself even more. Or even following your own instinct and intuition as to what to do next, what to search for next, etc. This I'm going to be talking about this in a little bit, but this is very important because sometimes you have an idea or an intuition or a gut feeling about what to do next, especially when you have free time. And I think more often than not, you should follow it because there's a reason why you have that idea or you want to do that activity, right? So I would say follow it. Um, and obviously connecting words with words, like I just said, right? Words are very powerful because they carry a semantic meaning, right? They carry a semantic power. Like if I say revolution, right? You have boom, like all these emotions, and there's this semantic, there's this meaning about it. So connecting words with words, right? One word leads to another word, and that word leads to another word. And this obviously has to do with concepts as well, but also based on categories, which can be subjective and personal to you, right? So I'm going to be talking about categories in a moment because I have a very good example about this that I thought of for this video. But categories basically deal with your own categories as to the associations that you make, right? Like if you think about home, if you think about Christmas, maybe you may think about, being at home, all warm, no school, watching TV. And another person might think about gifts, a lot of family members, right? And this other person may not necessarily think about gifts because in their family they never gave gifts to one another, and they never had people over, like big families or things like that. Maybe because they were in a different country, family wasn't around, whatever the reasons were. But it's interesting to see what type of associations, personal associations you have with your own categories, right? What's in your category of Christmas? What's in your category of holidays? What's in your category of school? What's in your category of learning? What's in your category of what work is, right? Like at work, there's always that typical lazy person, and there's always that typical neurotic person who's always asking questions, right? And that's my association. And then other people may have other associations and other elements within their own category, right? So that would also be interesting to explore. Okay, so I'm going to give you a concrete example of doing things that you have an intuition for next. Like, I couldn't sleep the other day, so the other night, and I was just laying there in bed, and all of a sudden, House of Cards is my favorite series. So all of a sudden, I got this like, spark, idea, inspiration. I was just like, I should look for some YouTube videos on House of Cards, and on people analyzing like the episodes. I should see if there are videos of people analyzing like each episode or the series. And I have watched these videos before, but I was like, let me look for some more. So this was just an idea. I could have done something else, excuse me, like listen to music or whatever, or watch other videos. but I went with it. I didn't watch any videos, but I did search for them. And you know that's kind of what I'm talking about. I'm talking about doing things, you know, like this whole video, most of my videos I do them based on intuition. Like it's just a feeling I have of something I'm thinking about, and then I just try to develop it. And then, you know, I don't really want it to be scripted because I don't want to be like, you know, like I don't want to sound unnatural. I'd rather just have it be, you know, like I have the ideas and then I just write down the points and then I just talk about them, right? Like me, spontaneously in the moment, which I think is better. But yeah, so that's what I'm talking about. Like just following your intuition, and that's also in some way doing it by association, right? Because you don't know where that association is coming from, right? Your unconscious is giving you that, so you should use it. Okay, now in terms of categories, categories are very interesting. Here, I want to talk about one that I thought about specifically with holidays, seeing as how the holiday season is coming up, Christmas, New Year's, right? And, you know, lately there's been a couple of birthdays that I've seen, you know, birthday here, a birthday there. It's this person's birthday, happy birthday, whatever. And then I was thinking about gifts too, because in school we had to do, like, we were looking at the idea of gifts, what's the best gift you've gotten, and all this stuff, right? And then recently on Netflix, Buy Now, the shopping conspiracy documentary came out, and I haven't finished it, but I started watching it. It's kind of interesting. I'm going to be talking about an idea in the first 30 minutes that's in that video, in that documentary. But then I was like, you know, I think all of these things like birthdays, and I think this idea is kind of old, but I just like thought of it again, I guess. And I was like, all of these things are basically to get people to buy things, right? To spend money, to consume, right? Like birthdays and Christmases, right? And it's like, you know, if you're a store and you have some expensive jewelry, maybe you'll get, maybe you won't make a lot of sales every day, but you'll get that person that walks in to your jewelry store looking for something nice to give to his wife or family member or whatever, right? And they'll buy that expensive something in the middle of like a random month, right? Because it's their birthday. Because so then it got me thinking, like, birthdays are really just an excuse for people to spend money. And for, you know, it could have also been that like companies make holidays so people spend money, right? Now I'm not going to get into whether that's bad or that's good, because I think to a certain extent it's good, because you're I guess the flow of money, and I've also been trying to look into that, the flow of money is good, you know, exchanging money, moving around like the US, and then it gets to be like a rich place or whatever, or a wealthy place. But it's also bad because you're being manipulated or pushed into buying stuff when maybe you don't even have money, right? So, but again, that's for another video. I'm not going to get into that. I just think it's interesting how maybe all of these things, you know, are made for that. So then I was like, okay, holidays is one category of getting people to spend money. What are other categories? And I did use ChatGPT for this because I thought it would be really interesting to get other categories. Okay, so under the category of holiday is like all of the holidays, right? Birthdays, Christmases, New Year's, Valentine's Day, you know, like all the Halloween, right? It's like buying costumes to just use once and things like that, candy, spring break, right? Like you want a pool, you want to get a new grill, you know, you want to grill out, buy meat, whatever, beer, chips. And then another category besides holidays are events. So events like the Super Bowl or like Black Friday. So these are events that have to do more, I would say, with like some sections of the population, right? Like everybody that likes what is this called? Like the NBA is going to be following, buying jerseys, following the NBA, right? The final, I forget what it's called, but yeah, like the Super Bowl, Black Friday, right? So these type of things are like created, I guess, by the companies, right? And I assume they're also to get people to buy things, right? To get people to spend money. Another category is life milestones. So graduations, weddings, unfortunately also funerals, right? Um, what is this called? Like the birth of a new person, right? Excuse me. Um, Baby showers, right? So all of these things that are also like not for everybody, right? They're not holidays, but each person does it whenever they want. They also take a lot of money. Seasonal and weather spending like summer or winter. So it's like it's summer, I gotta get new clothes, shorts, all this stuff, right? Like the swimming pool or a little inflatable pool. Or it's winter, I gotta buy my jacket, my sweaters, my coats, my blankets, be all fuzzy and warm, right? And spend money on that. So that's another one. Lifestyle trends is another category, like people that are geeky, right? And they like technology. I got to get the latest, whatever technological gadget, or fitness, right? Oh, I'm going to start going to the gym. So I got to buy like 5 new outfits. I got to get like 3 new water bottles. I got to get like the eye wash for it to keep track of my health. All this crap, right? That has to do with my new lifestyle, right? And they're just trends again. Fashion and beauty trends, of course, right? So that's like all the time. And the last category is tourism and traveling for experiences, such as things that you have on your bucket list. So the idea of a bucket list could also even be like a marketing strategy to get people to pay for things, right? Tourism, the whole idea of, I don't want to buy things, I want to buy experiences. You're still buying things, right? You're paying someone to take you across the ocean or to show you some island, or you're still buying things, you're consuming, right? Even though you're like you have, and again, this romantic idea of like it's really the experience is probably pushed by the companies, right? It's a marketing strategy at the end of the day. So it was interesting because in the shopping conspiracy, Buy Now, they were actually talking about how, like before, there used to be like the seasonal clothes, right? The spring brand or the spring clothes and the winter clothes. And now it gets so crazy that they're actually pushing new stuff like every week. Like every week, there's entire new outfits, right? And an entire new line. So it's just mayhem right now. It's just crazy, right? And that's just weird. It's like, why can't you just stick to but obviously not, because you want to make more, because you get greedy, because you can, because you see other people doing it. So then you do it. Why not? Right? Um, and what was also interesting about this Buy Now, the shopping conspiracy, is the idea that they were saying how uh, they tried they tried and they succeeded in making the shopping experience virtual. So what I mean by virtual is that it's everywhere. They basically say like, we wanted you to, because they have these people from like Amazon and all these companies that they used to work there like 20, 15 years ago. They're talking in this documentary of what they did, like psychologically and sociology and, for economic or corporation purposes. Um, and they're like, yeah, so what we wanted is to get the people to basically have an idea about anything they need. Like, oh, I may need, I think I may need some new speakers, right? Because I'm having people over lately and we want to listen to some music, right? And my TV isn't loud enough. So, and you have that idea. And normally, what would happen many years ago is just you have that idea and then you just kind of forget about it. Or you analyze it further and you're like, well, I'm only having them once a month. So it's not a big deal. I don't need to spend money on speakers. I don't even have money. You analyze and you filter it out and then you just don't buy them. Well, now with technology being virtually anywhere, you can actually be sitting on your bed, just have an idea, and with one tap purchase, as they say, one click away, you just buy the thing, and you didn't have time to filter, you didn't have time to think, you didn't have time to analyze, right? So that's crazy, and they did that on purpose. So now that's crazy, that's mind-blowing. And so it's like you're sitting on your bed and you just have this idea of like, oh, I may need some speakers, but I don't know. And then all of a sudden you see some speakers and you're just like, well, what the hell, I'll just buy them, right? And it's like consume, consume, consume. So that's crazy because now you can pay with your watch from online instead of needing to go to the stores. So I'm going to be talking about potential in a little bit, but that's raw potential. That's taking the potential and exploiting it, right? Taking, like, people nowadays can just pay with their watches, right? You don't even have to open anything, right? You don't even have to unblock your phone or open up your phone. Like, you just pay like that and you're good to go, right? You get your things, but you're spending money, right? That's the thing. So the idea here, just to finish this idea off, is notice how everything is made for you to consume, right? From jingly songs, right? Catchy songs or catchphrases, to movies, to stories, to ideologies, right? Basically anything, even the news, and I've spoken on this before, anything that, I see the news for information, and it's like, no, there's stuff being pushed also for you to purchase, for you to spend, for you to panic and spend, right? Like, that's already known. That's a little cliche. But yeah, just I wanted to back this up with like more evidence. So as I get more evidence on certain things I've said before, I'll repeat the same conclusions, but I'll back them up with different types of ideas or evidence. And this is one of them. Okay, before we get into the potential and the probability, I just wanted to talk about this critical feedback loop. And what I noticed is that I have students conversate amongst themselves, and I give them a list of questions like, "What's your favorite color?" And then they ask each other the question, "What's your favorite color?" They answer the question, blue, red, black, whatever, and then they just move on to the next question. And I was like, no, guys, that's not the way you're supposed to conversate. You're supposed to like give each other feedback right after you give the answer. So it's like, what's your favorite color? My favorite color is black. Oh, nice. Oh, why? But why do you like it? And what other color? And what's a color you don't like? Or and this is because as an English teacher, you need to have students practice English. But this got me thinking about like this communication process. And I've made a couple videos on communication lately. So communication is symbolic in terms that, when you write a T, it's a T because there's a consensus that it's a T, but that those two lines really aren't anything, right? They're just symbols to represent T. But they could be, it could be an S. Those two lines could be S, could be A, could be whatever you want it to be, right? And this is very interesting because you see this with these like memes that would come out where there was like a red car and a blue car, and then it would tell you like this equals 3, right? So you would have to infer that like one of those cars was a 1 and the other one was a 2, right? And this is interesting because you can also do this with like chess. Like, how you have the king and the queen and the pawns, and basically you can grab like a piece of green paper or a green little square and say this little green square is the king, and that's the king, right? And it will move like the king, and you can grab a bunch of yellow little squares and say these are the pawns, or red big squares and say those are the pawns. It doesn't matter, right? Because at the end of the day, it's all symbolic, right? It's representative, which I talked about in my representative video. Yeah, like saying car is 1 and table is 2. So a car plus a table is 3, right? So you just associate again these things with that and represent them that way, and that's how you communicate, right? So that's a little bit of symbolic communication. And as I was like doing this question and answer, because I made a little chart in my other Teacher Frank channel on how to ask your classmates questions, have an answer, and then a feedback, right? To have that third step, very important, to not just ignore the person or be like, cool, whatever, but like actually, but why? And tell me more. And oh, really? I didn't know. There's a technique, and I think I've spoken on this by Andrew Bustamante. I think he mentioned it, or there's this podcast on YouTube called The Body Language something. I don't remember, but I've spoken on it before. And basically, there's a tactic to get people, and I was looking for it, and good thing I have it on my post-it notes. There's a tactic to get people to continue to talk so you can extract information from them. And it's kind of an elicitation technique, but not really, because An elicitation technique doesn't involve questions, and this technique involves asking questions. But it's basically, this is the process. You ask two questions and then a confirmation. Two questions, confirmation. Two questions, confirmation. And doing this feedback loop is basically going to get you to extract as much information from the other person as possible. I guess this works on an unconscious, subconscious level. So yeah, if you want to know something, you can, ask the first question, what's your favorite color? Okay, why do you like that color? They give you the answer, and then you say something like, oh yeah, I can see why you like that color. I mean, the color I like it is also because I've liked it since I was a kid, right? And automatically that other person will just keep on talking. And again, whatever they say, you ask another question, and then a confirmation. So I wanted to say this because more than anything, I wanted to remind myself of this. And like I said, a lot of times I make these videos for me. Okay, so now let's get into the juicy part, which is the potentials and the probability. This part is maybe a little bit difficult, but bear with me. Okay, so the first thing it says is, let's say it's the weekend and your goal is to have as much fun as possible, right? How can you achieve this? How can you achieve this goal? What is the right combination of, of steps or stages to do this for you to achieve the end goal, which is for you to get to Sunday afternoon, Sunday night, and say, wow, what an excellent weekend, right? It's Friday. What are you going to do? And you may say, well, I know the perfect way for me to have a fun weekend. On Friday, I'm gonna have some friends over and we're gonna have a barbecue. And then on Friday, we're gonna go watch a movie. And then at night, we're gonna go out drinking. And then on Sunday, I'm gonna stay home and watch some movies, and it will be a great weekend. But what guarantees you that that is the right combination? What if you're sitting there on Saturday watching a movie at the movie theater, it's just like you planned, and you're actually tired or sleepy, or you're having a shitty day because something was off, right? Like how can you achieve that goal? So I'm going to be talking about potentials and probabilities in this term, and at the end I'm going to be sharing a little like a little text I wrote. So here's another one. Let's say you're at a bank or in class. What are the right combinations and the right steps for you, for example, at the bank, to get the best deal, to extract or to get the best deal from the person if you have a problem? And what's the best way for them to get you the information you really need? Because they may withhold information intentionally or unintentionally because they're tired or they're mad or they're not there all the way, right? In terms of maybe they're sleepy, whatever. They're not paying attention to you really, or they're not thinking about solving your problem for real. So what are the right words, the right phrases, in the right order that you can say for you to actually get the best deal? Or in class, what's the best way for you to learn something? Or as a teacher, what's the best way for you to explain something so it goes through, so students get it? So, and not only get it, but actually have fun, right? Or let's say you're rolling a die, right? Let's say you're rolling some dice. I have some dice here. Let's say you're rolling some dice. What's the best way for you to get what you need? If you need an 8, what's the best way for you to get an 8, right? Again, that's probability. Probability deals with like, dice are the symbol of probability. Like at a casino, you're rolling the die to see what you can get. Or let's say you're playing a board game, right? And you need a certain card, or you're playing cards and you need a king, or you need an 8, or you need a 5 of spades. What's the best way for you to get that, right? In those terms, it's not really up to you because the deck is already shuffled, right? So you could say that that's just not really probability because you're not, it's not like the cards are getting reshuffled. They're already shuffled and your destiny is already written in those cases, right? You just haven't seen it, right? So that's interesting because a shuffled deck is like destiny written in stone already, because you can't change it. You just haven't seen it, but it's already written. It's already there, right? You're either not going to get it or you're going to get it, but it's already a done deal, right? But for there to be real potential, it would be like dice in the middle or of the air, right? Like rolling, and then you not knowing, nobody really knows in that moment. It's not written. Maybe it is because there's a prediction, there's a predictive pattern, right? Like if you, maybe with physics, you analyze the roll and you, or like I was learning yesterday that when you roll two dice, I guess 6 and 8 are the most. I didn't know that, but 6 and 8 are the most, are the numbers that come up the most with a two roll die, with a two roll dice. When you roll two dice, that's pretty interesting. Or another one, when you're looking for work, what are the chances that you're going to end up looking for work? You know, because for me, getting a job really depends not on your skills or your talent, but the right time. If the company just recently lost people, right? Like they didn't die, but they left. If a company recently left, if a company's employees recently either got fired or they quit, they're in need of people. And if you go right when they need people, you're in luck, right? That's what they call luck. So, but it's probability, right? It's potential. So, yeah, what's the right order? And then if like a lot of people are applying for the job, what's the right way for you to get the job and not others? What's the right combination? What are the right words you need to say? What are the right things you need to do, right? At that, for them to hire you, right? Like for the boss to see you, the manager, the hiring manager, excuse me, to be like, yeah, this is the right person for the job, right? What are those chances? So a lot of this right order is very interesting because potential has to do with achieving a goal, a goal that is set beforehand, right? So it's not just about doing random things and figuring out all of the random unlimited possibilities that you have in front of you towards the future because this deals 100% with the future. No, it's about, you know, having a goal like I want to get to Sunday night and say, wow, what a great weekend. How can I achieve that? And, there's like all of the possibilities, but I'm only going to select the ones that for me make me happy, right? Because there are outcomes where obviously I'll end up saying, what a shitty weekend, or what an okay weekend, or a neutral weekend, or other types of variations of that, right? But I want to limit that, and even within that limitation, there are probably an infinite amount also of possibilities, right? But I want to limit it to just the ones where I say, what a great weekend at the end of my weekend. Um, so there is a goal, but even that goal can be achieved through different means, right? Now, those limitations, those possibilities within that limitation of the goal towards the future of me having a good weekend may also vary in degree as to how fun, right? Like super fun, like too much fun, or like normal fun, or like not a lot of fun, or like just the right amount of fun I was looking for, right? So, yeah, this all has to do with a goal set. And I'm kind of starting from what I've just recently thought of this, but now I'm working backwards because I'm going to be talking about what I first thought about this. Um, and yes, so it's the goal and the process. The process is also very important. It's not to say that it's all about the goal, because hell no, it's about how you get to that goal. It's actually about the process, because the process is what defines the goal, right? If you had fun while you were in the process, then you'll be able to get to the end and say, what a great weekend, because now I'm thinking about the process, right? It's not like you're gonna have an okay weekend or a shitty weekend, and then at the end you're gonna say, what a great weekend, because that was my goal, to just say what a great weekend at the end. No, it's all about the process, actually, right? um, okay, so this all comes to mind because I've been thinking with some people lately on like how to start a business, right? Like a school. Like I'm thinking, yeah, a school, like teaching things for people to learn things. Um, yeah, but having it be a business, and like I was playing these board games, and someone said something like, "Why don't you set up your own school, your own academy?" Right? An academy, I think, it's a very interesting word, because I think that was related to like Socrates. I think one of those old philosophers, like the first philosophers, had an academy. I think it was Aristotle, and they had academies where they just taught things for people to learn things, right? Like skills. But it's not really skills, because my academy would have to do more with like theoretical things, right? Maybe even like human personal development things, more psychologically related, right? Not so much like carpentry or electrician, right? Like how to install a socket or an electrical plug or something like that. Um, but again, this has to do with potential. So I'm like, okay, I see these people, and I'm like, okay, there's potential here. You see the potential. How do you see the potential? Because there's talent, because you see consistency, right? As I was researching this and asking ChatGPT, you see patterns of behavior that you're like, hey, we can achieve something here. But in order to get there, again, you would have to find the right combination, the right words in the right order, right? Like you getting a job, or, and I'm glad I came out with the examples first, because otherwise this idea is already kind of hard to grasp. But I feel like it's easier with the examples that I just gave. So we're talking about potentials, possibilities, probabilities, right? And obviously also for so then you would say, what would be your intention, or what would you do it for? Well, obviously for economic reasons, right? To have money. But not only for that, because I'm a little bit more ambitious, and I do want to have cultural impacts, right? Like impacts in society. And like my objective has always been to impact. So cultural impacts, maybe even economical impacts, in terms of myself, right? Like getting rich. Societal impacts, right? Like changing things for the better. Because I'm thinking about all this, and it's like, like for a school, you would really just have to set up, there's these English schools where you just have the method. The method is, I don't know if perfect, but the method works. So anybody can come and do it, right? So just imagine developing the methods, like just focusing exclusively on the methodologies, right? You have the methodologies perfect, right? They're all in place, simple, easy to follow. Anybody can follow them. And then you just get someone that kind of knows about that, and they'll learn also as they teach, right? Because you're the content is given and the methodology is given. Obviously, it's an academy, it's a school, um, but it basically teaches itself, right? And then like the teacher is just correcting the students, doing all the work, obviously, because they're the ones that are learning, right? They have to do the stuff. Um, but yeah, and in this case, it's kind of like playing board games, right? Because in board games, it's also interesting. They have a lot of paths. You have to, like Catan, there's strategy to it. Like I was playing Century yesterday, very interesting game, because you have to predict, right? And that's what strategy is. You have to predict, but at the same time, the other players are also trying to get their take. They're trying to win, so you're competing against everybody, and at the same time you have to think of the best way to win, right? The best options that you have, right? So again, it's all potential, it's all probability. um, or like I said, it's like pulling out a card that you need, or rolling a die, and not knowing what you're going to get. So there's this element in it of prediction, right? Which is really hard to do, because you're like, how can I get better at predicting and at identifying like the future, basically? Well, you can't unless you have experience, right? Only with experience are you going to be able to say, based on my experience, and even then you may be off or wrong, but based on my experience, I more or less know that this is the way to win. So you win, or you get closer to it, right? So I guess it's based on experience, or having someone teach you and guide you, right? Which would be like having like a mentor or something like that, right? Yeah, so I wrote here, not knowing what you're going to get. Not knowing is the issue, right? Like I said, so again, you need knowledge, you need to know. Mm, excuse me, as they say, knowledge is power. So yeah, in this case, I'm going to be talking about, I'm almost done here. Um, and probability. The key is also in probability. I need to explore these topics further. Um, the probability of this either happening or not happening, right? And I think probability, if we study probability, and I actually wrote potentials first and then probability, but in sequence it's actually backwards. You first deal with probability, or realistically, you deal with probability, because probability is detecting it and then seeing the potential, right? Like, well, first you see the potential, and then probability basically grounds you. It gives you that realistic perspective, right? So probability is you imagining things. It's the potential. No, sorry. The potential is the potential, right? The potential is dreaming of it, idealism, right? Like, oh, what if, this could be possible, or that could be possible, or, getting creative. And then probability makes you question, what is the likelihood of this happening or not, right? It's more realistic. And it's realistic because I asked ChatGPT in this case, and I already spoke a little bit on this before in this video, earlier in this video, but it's basically thanks to you observing consistent patterns, right? And seeing if they match up with your ideal. So if you want to start a business with some people or open up a school or something like that, you may look at those patterns and then try to see whether or not they match with what you're trying to do, right? A lot of it is based on commitment, just people doing things, right? And a lot of it, of course, is based on talent. But talent doesn't guarantee commitment. So those are two different things. Now, if you have the whole package, if you have talent and commitment, you're in luck, right? And that would be perfect. So again, it's more realistic because it's based on observation. It's based on evidence. It's based on things that you can see. I've noticed this. I've seen this, right? So I think this is possible. This is probable, right? So yeah, that's basically that. And it's also based on a couple things. It's based on track record also. So how committed people have been in the past also. So you see those patterns. And then I like this part because you can engage in hypothetical scenario planning, right? And the hypothetical scenario planning is like, what if we were to open up a school? How would that be like, right? And then just kind of see where people go from there and start planning that. For that, you would need to sit down and have a chat and things like that. And I came across this where it said decision trees with the root or the node, the branches, and the leaves, which I thought was very interesting. So a decision tree, which I'm gonna try to make some of these, is like if you say ChatGPT gave me this example of like, I want to, like, you have a problem or a situation or an issue or whatever, right? Like, I want to eat. And then you ask yourself, like, do you want to eat at home? And then you have like two branches from there. You could have more, obviously, but there's one yes and one no. Okay, I want to eat at home. Yes. Do we have food? Yes, I eat. No, I go shopping. Do I go shopping? Yes or no, right? Do we have food at home? No. Can I order takeout, or can I go out to eat at a restaurant? Right? And then you just branch off like this. I need to check it out again, but that's kind of how it works. It's called the decision tree, and it gives you the variation or the probability of a situation, right? But you're basically working with like different scenarios, right? You go from one scenario, and if this scenario takes you to this scenario, what would that scenario be? And also, and it deals with a lot of or instead of and or but. It deals with or this or that, and or is offering potential, right? That's offering probability. That's offering possibility, right? So I thought that was very interesting. So again, I might watch this video again, specifically on this part, because these ideas I kind of achieved, I think, the objective of like grounding these ideas with the examples I said in the beginning, because these ideas are very abstract, right? You're focusing basically, I think I got this idea from like the quantum physics videos, which are like based on the future, right? And all of the different possibilities that open up, right? In the future is raw potential, right? So like, just as now I can lift up my right hand, I can lift up my left hand, I can lift both of them. up, I can lift none of them up, I can stand up, I can, you know, you have all this potential, right? And time is the only thing that's the enemy, because if you're not doing anything, if you're not using the potential or looking for potential or thinking of the possibilities or doing anything, then you're just, you know, letting all of that go to waste, right? Missed opportunities. So I thought I'd finish this video reading the text that I wrote, which is on the YouTube, is on my YouTube and my Facebook pages, my YouTube channel and my Facebook page. And yeah, I thought I'd finish by reading this. So here we go. It's practically Christmas, and I want to tell you about a dream I dreamt. I dreamt a dream about potential. I was surrounded by the people I know in my life, and we were questioning ourselves. We wanted to know things like probabilities, statistics, and potentials. I personally wanted to know the different and potential future outcomes for getting rich, having money, prosperity, and a good life. I wanted to know the likelihood of combining our different talents, visions, and connections to create something incredible. Statistically speaking, what is the probability that between you and I, or among us 3 or 4 people here right now, we have what it takes to produce something extraordinary? How many missed opportunities are we missing? In my dream, I dreamt about potential, and it made me question, search, and curious about whether or not we had what it takes, whether or not we had the right combinations, whether or not we could say the right words in the right orders and have the right moments that could trigger the right ideas and the right actions. Did we have the right combinations, or was it all just a dream? I dreamt a dream where anything is possible, and if you can imagine it, then you're already halfway there. A dream or a life where you go exploring people's potentials, people's skills and talents, people's resources and passions, and put them all to work. Combinations that can open any lock. I see you have what it takes, and if we combine what you know, have, and want to do with what I know, have, and want to do, then there's really no holding us back. All we have to do is search, explore, and find. What are the potentials? What are the combinations? Time is our only true enemy, because if we don't look for the right potentials and combinations, find them, and experiment with them, then time will rob us of them, and it will never give them back. Peace.